We're going to continue along talking about the blood vessels, and we're going to talk about, namely, we're going to talk just a little bit about how blood flows through the blood vessels. And we're not going to list every single blood vessel that the blood flows through just because that would take a lot of time to do, and it's kind of complex, it's difficult in this situation where we don't have a gigantic board, but we're going to do the best that we can here, okay? So first, let's talk about how blood flows out of the heart. So blood leaves the heart through something called the ascending aortic arch. The ascending aortic arch. And you guys can see that right here. Oops, that's my pen. Well, we got the pen going then. You can see there's the ascending aortic arch. All right, how that just leaves the heart through that big vessel. And remember, that's an elastic artery, right? Remember that? Okay. So here's what's really neat is that the coronary arteries, as we talked about, get to my highlighter here. All right. So my coronary arteries are going to branch directly off the ascending aortic arch, and they're going to grow right out into the heart, which I just think that's a pretty cool design, right? You don't have to agree. I mean, I guess cool is a relative term, but it's a nice way to go. It's quite efficient, that's for sure. There's my left coronary artery and my right coronary artery going to the left side and the right side of the heart. Now, where do we go from there with the arteries? Well, here's our aortic arch coming right up here. Okay. Some things we want to know are carotid arteries. What I've tried to do, guys, so there's a lot of different blood vessels, obviously, in the body that we can name. The nice thing, number one, is that if you know the name of an artery, you almost always know the name of a vein that runs right next to it. Because for every artery with a specific name, it's usually named for a specific region. The vein that's accompanying it, that's bringing the blood back from where the artery is bringing it out to, is going to have the same name. Now, it's not the case in the carotid artery, though, but it's the case for most of them. So our right and left carotid arteries, I point those out because those are really important, obviously. Those are what's going to supply blood flow to the head and the brain. So we obviously, that's a really important artery to know. Our subclavian arteries are going to be underneath of our clavicle, right? Clavicle, that clavicular region. I point that out because if you break the clavicle, we have to worry about that subclavian arteries placement right underneath there. There's also going to be subclavian vein too. Okay. Let's see. Anything else to notice on here? Nope, that's it. Okay. Heading to the upper limb. Some other things to know, our brachial artery. Our brachial artery is right here. We take blood pressure in the brachial artery, remember, because it is right here in line with the heart. The brachial artery is also when you can find that. So if you kind of go in there and you palpate, push around a little bit, if you kind of move that bicep up, you can usually find that brachial artery. And if you do find it and kind of press in on it, you might make your arm go a little, lose a little bit of blood flow. So maybe don't press on that too hard, but you might be able to find that. Okay. Your radial artery is where you're going to take your pulse when you are taking a person's heart rate. So two important things to know. Let's look at some more artery names that we want to know. There's our aortic arch, goes to the descending thoracic aorta in the thoracic region. You guys got that. Descending abdominal aorta in the abdominal region. We worry about internal bleeding. We worry about injury to the blood supply to the gut also. During impact type of injuries and sports-related injuries can include those as well. Our femoral artery is the main artery in our leg. We have some other arteries in the leg, but the femoral artery is the main artery in the leg, and the upper leg especially. And again, we worry about broken legs and injuries to the femoral artery. The popliteal artery is the artery that runs. So we can take a look here, kind of orienting ourselves. This is the anterior view. This is the posterior view. So anterior on the left, posterior on the right. The popliteal artery is the artery that runs through the popliteal space. That's the space behind the knee, kind of between those femoral condyles, protected by the patella in the anterior portion. And then our fibular artery running by the fibula, and then dorsalis pedis artery in the foot. Now we talk about our systemic veins. Here is our vena cava, click back to that a little bit. Superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. We definitely want to know what those are called. And they just have the yellow arrows in there to point. You can see if you look a little bit lower, there's the inferior vena cava is labeled. Superior vena cava is labeled up here as well. Now our jugular veins, it's just interesting because the jugular vein is the counterpart to the carotid artery, but they're not called the same thing. The jugular vein, though, is that it's very important. Obviously, that's draining most of the blood from the head. When we're looking at the veins in the artery, the what I point out is the median cubital vein. We often talk about the antecubital space, is that space in the um, at the base of the upper arm where we're going to put our stethoscope to measure blood pressure. This is also where we do blood draws. So venipuncture is a blood draw, right? When we put a little needle in there and pull blood. It's in the cubital fossa. And there's two veins that are connected by the median cubital vein. Let's see if we could have pointed here. There's a circle up there, but here's our median cubital vein right here. And this is one that's frequently going to be used to collect blood. And then our blood goes into the pulmonary circulation. We will talk more about this next time, but I'm going to point this out just a little bit. So right here, we can see the direction of blood flow from the right atrium to the right ventricle to the pulmonary arteries, out to the lungs, back through the pulmonary veins, into the left atrium, left ventricle, out to the body, run through the body system, come back in through the superior and inferior vena cava, and then go to the whole thing again. Now, when we get down to pulmonary circulation, we have the pulmonary arteries are going to branch out into capillaries, right, into the pulmonary capillaries. Those pulmonary capillaries are going to wrap around the alveoli, where we're going to have very close contact with the alveoli. Remember, the alveoli is a single cell layer. The capillaries are single cell layer. We're going to have a nice amount of diffusion right there. Pulmonary capillaries are going to bring this oxygenated blood back up to the pulmonary arteries, the branch of the pulmonary veins. Those pulmonary veins are going to get right back in there. We're going to bring those pulmonary veins back into the left atrium, and so the cycle will continue. All right, guys, this is a shorty. That's okay. So this is the last lecture for the week. We're also going to have a series of lab slides and exercises as well that'll come out on Wednesday or Thursday. So jump on over to Canvas. You're going to have an assignment, and then we're going to have an open note quiz, which will just be a quick multiple choice quiz for you to complete. It will be open note, but I do want to do a little knowledge check-in. All right, guys, so do your assignment and then your quiz, and then you'll be done with our lecture stuff for the week. And of course, always please let me know if you have questions or anything while you're doing your assignments, before you take your quiz, etc. All right, guys, take care, and we'll talk to you soon.